Here in Iceland we have over more than 100 years of restoration work. In 1907, the law passed on establishing an agency, a government agency on restoration specifically. And at the same time they also had a law on establishing an agency on reforestation. So because these were very, big challenges in Iceland because of 1,000 years of degradation. And so in the beginning, the restoration agency focused on sand and sand dunes and to restore them and revegetate them. And there were big parts of the country, but here in the south, we just had black sand that had advanced over the century, and caused that people have to stop farming and causing sandstorms. So that was very much the main focus in restoration work in Iceland at the beginning. Later on, around the mid-20th century, the focus was maybe more on restoration of pasture land and grazing, getting grazing under control because of sheep farming. And in the more recent years, last 30-40 years, the focus has been on ecological restoration and creating an environment for ecosystems to rebound, to revegetate or restore again. And for the last 10 years, a special focus has been on wetland restoration here in Iceland. It's, to deal with climate change and to increase biodiversity. It is believed that 25% of the country was at bird forest, which is the indigenous tree plant here in Iceland of the forest. And we have all here in Iceland recorded the settlement. The Vikings came from Norway and some came from Scotland and settled here in Iceland in the 9th and the 10th and the 11th century. And they brought with them the way of farming that they had done in Scandinavia and on the British Isles. And the Icelandic ecosystem couldn't take it. The forest was different here. We have bird forests. And the soil is different. We are a volcanic island, so the soil is really loose, volcanic soil. So they believe soon 300 into settlements, 400, most of the forest was gone, had been chopped down for farming, for charcoal, for fuel, and then also in combination with colder climate, and surely we have eruptions here, volcanic eruption, that the ecosystems was just downgrading constantly. And grazing, sheep grazing, in the beginning it was both cattle and sheep grazing, but later on sheep grazing all year around was very damaging to our ecosystem. So when you got to the 17th, 18th, 19th century or the 20th, you have areas here that were totally degraded. The vegetation cover is gone, and soil erosion, and you have this moon landscape. And even for Icelanders, I think this is just how Iceland is and has always been when you drive around the country. But in fact, big parts of the country are just collapsed ecosystems. But also, we had great changes here in Iceland in the 20th century that start in the beginning of the 20th century. Iceland was kind of transformed from being an agricultural society to rely on fisheries. People moved from the farms to the coast, to the fishing villages, and then, of course, later to the capital area. So farming was not central anymore. It was not the future. It was in the fishing. It was fishing that transformed Iceland from being one of the poorest countries in Europe some 100 years ago to become one of the most wealthy countries, not only in Europe, in the world. So, so maybe people also kind of left these issues behind them as they left the farms and the agricultural society. What makes our training or program unique is that we take a holistic approach to restoration. We focus both on the biophysical aspect of restoration to understand the soil and the vegetation and the nutrients in the soil and all that, but also we have to also understand to have successful intervention. You have to engage and communicate and work with the community and have an understanding how do you put things in action and into implementation. And this approach is reflected in our students, or what we like to call them fellows, who come here. We have both people who are working in research on soil, on vegetation, research institute, universities, but we also have field officers, specialists who work in the field, who are more into intervention and in communicating with the local community and the government and the stakeholders. And what we want them to take from this training is like, you need both. Even though you might be a specialist more in the biophysical, you have to understand also how do you develop an intervention and implement it, and the other way around as well. Those who are in the field, constantly communicating and in carrying out program, they understand better the biophysical aspect of the intervention, understanding the soil, the nutrients, the interaction between the type of trees or plants you want to plant and the soil and the landscape. We could say that we work with institutions. It's not individuals that apply. We work with institutions that play a key role in restoration or sustainable land management, and in our partner countries. And through that, the selection process takes place. They shortlist candidates for the training. We interview and select. Our participants or students in our training program are all working professionals. So they have finished a bachelor degree, some have finished their masters, and we even have had PhD candidates, or some have just recently finished their PhD studies. And we are quite clear on that since they're working professionals themselves, that they bring their own experience and insight into the classroom, kind of integrated part of the training. And they come from different countries. We have specialists coming from Mongolia and the dry Central Asia, like Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. We have had someone from Tajikistan. And these specialists, they often are very much into grazing and rangeland health, right? But we have also people coming from Africa, Ghana, Uganda, Malawi, Lesotho, Namibia, Ethiopia, and their maybe focus is more on your wetlands can be, but also methods in crop growing and trying to introduce new methods who are more environmental friendly or ecosystem friendly. And so there you have, from different ecosystems, different cultures, language, academic traditions. But that's part of the magic of the training, to get people to come together from these different countries with different challenges. Maybe they're all dealing with the same challenges, but in the essence, but but they might be different from one country to another, the context as such. And we organize the training that way, a lot of group work, analyzing together cases and come up with proposal of solutions or intervention. Through all this intervention, now all this cooperation and group work, they learn from each other. The cultural, learning and interpersonal skills are also important. But our training is quite intense. First 3 months, we have like a scheduled activities 5 days a week from 9 to 4 or 5. Lectures, field work, excursion, group works, all kinds of keeping them really active, and it's quite intense. And while the second half of our training focuses on individual research projects. So, and everything has to be finished and done and submitted before they leave at the end of 6 months. So for many, that is also part of the learning, this intense, activities, schedule, and strict timelines, and submit drafts and final reports on time. Now, I think restoring the ecosystem is crucial to find, the balance between humans and nature in this. And maybe we are getting better, understanding it better that, that we have to also listen to the earth, the ecosystem. To intervention will be based on what kind of soil and the climate you have, and the local indigenous plants. Maybe it should be more important using them than introducing new species from different ecosystems. But absolutely, to deal with, loss in biodiversity and the climate change. Our ecosystem in a balance has a chance to kind of deal with the climate change, but the ecosystem out of balance, not.